From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. And hello, everyone. I'm Tom Brady's personal psychologist, also known as Jaime Hixson.
My name is Eric Manning, also known as Eric Rosen.
Well, we're very, very happy that you could join us, folks. We certainly hope that you remained safe from the atrocity that was that snowstorm that took place over the weekend, because it was reminiscent of the blizzard of '96, which is pretty interesting considering that this is the 20-year anniversary of that infamous blizzard that took place all those years ago. But I'm wondering exactly which snowstorm was worse, whether it was that one or whether it was this one that took place over the weekend. Do you know that the city was roughly an inch away from setting an all-time record for the biggest snowstorm ever?
I'm pretty shocked. Yeah.
And just to give you an idea, Staten Island alone got 27 inches, which means technically it set a record that the city held, I think, in 1982.
It was pretty tough. I gotta say it was tough for all of our listeners and viewers out there in Staten Island. I'm just happy that it's over right now. We were able to get through it. Me personally, my car was actually buried under God knows how many feet of snow up until about 2 hours ago. Good people from Firo Landscaping came to my house and just unearthed my car with a bobcat machine with the help of my mom and my dad. So love you guys very much for getting me those people to help me out. Granted, costly, but you know what? It doesn't matter about the pennies and cents. As long as I was able to get out of that mess and was able to get to be on the show with you, and we'll be able to get to work. Thank you, Mom, for driving me early today. Love you very much. And
by the way, another 8 weeks till spring.
I know. And what's coming up next month, of course, is February 2nd.
Which is Groundhog Day, which means we find out whether we're going to get another 6 weeks of winter or if we're going to get an early spring. I'm holding out hope that we get that early spring.
Or if Chuck bites Mayor de Blasio's hand or not.
Yeah, that would be a pretty funny sight right there. If anything, I would much rather see Chuck be the mayor as opposed to Mr. de Blasio, but that's a story for another day.
Especially, his superintendent years ago, remember that really bad snowstorm that took place?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, and I quote, "It's a beautiful day."
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a beautiful day with this yay high of snow. The street's not really safe for people to drive on. Students shouldn't even be on the roads, let alone the teachers. And she's calling it a beautiful day.
Mm-hmm.
This one was obviously on something or smoking something when she made that statement.
Well, it was certainly a beautiful day yesterday because we had sunny blue skies. But you do realize that parking is going to be a major problem for everybody in this city because all of the parking spots are taken by powder.
I know, most of it. And if you do get a parking spot, you're going to be reluctant to even move from there because somebody else is going to be advantageous enough to take it.
Well, there is a bright side to this whole thing. As atrocious as the weather was over the weekend, we had an excuse to stay indoors, which meant we could watch some football yesterday.
And not just football, Netflix.
Football, Netflix, YouTube.
You name it.
Maybe Hulu, anything involving the web. But the bottom line is we were able to find an excuse to watch ourselves some football yesterday. And boy, did we have a couple of conference championships that were polar opposites of each other. One basically went down to the last 12 seconds of the game, while the other was decided in the first quarter.
Yeah, first quarter, first half even. It was two polar opposites. The AFC title game, of course, the New England Patriots, the number 2 seed, representing the AFC East, traveling west to the Mile High City to take on the Denver Broncos.
And, of course, the Patriots are now they were the defending champions. But yesterday, that was probably about as hard fought and as well played defensively a game as we've seen in a conference championship in a long time. But when you think about it, Denver was the better team because, for one, they had a great game plan, pressuring Tom Brady for the majority of the game, forcing him to make some throws that he didn't want to make, and forcing a couple of turnovers.
Oh, yeah. Von Miller, I think, played the biggest part. That defensive line, when you think of Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, and Derek Wolfe, they all played a pivotal part in really getting to Brady and really bringing that wall. Remember the same sort of plan that Carolina had against Russell Wilson last week when they converged on him, trying to confuse him a bit. The same game plan that Denver brought into this game against Brady. Really confuse him. Make sure he has no idea what you're going to do pre-snap. Just like Manning, because if they sniff what you can do pre-snap, they are good at making adjustments on the fly.
Yeah. And as it turns out, the game plan that they did was brilliant. They got 2 picks against him, one of which wound up being decided in the last 12 seconds, which wound up being a tipped pass by Aqib Talib, and it was picked off in the end zone.
By Bradley Roby, the second-year cornerback out of Ohio State. And you think about what also Denver did great on defense, they took away a lot of the easy short passes. They made Edelman irrelevant in this game.
Yeah.
Last week against, in the divisional series against Kansas City, Edelman had 10 catches of 100 yards. This week, not even close to that kind of. The only person that really had the most productive was Gronkowski. Remember that desperation pass he made on 4th and 10 to Gronkowski in the middle of the field, which is kind of ballsy for Brady. But you know him; he likes to make gutsy calls but gutsy passes. And then the one you mentioned, with 12 seconds left, what does Brady do? Throws a pass to Gronkowski in the middle of the end zone.
Yeah,
with his feet in, luckily.
And there were a couple of other things to take out of this game. One,
on 4th and 1.
Yeah. Number one, it obviously it would be easy to try and dissect this the day after the game, but what did you think of the fourth down call that the coach made, bypassing a field goal and going for it on basically a long 4th and 1?
I did not like the lob pass. No matter what the commentators, and I respect Jim Shorts and Phil Simms a lot, but I disagree with them calling that was a good play to go for. The lob pass to Edelman, that defense saw that coming a mile away, especially when you have a ball like that in the air for so long and all that. It's easy for that defense player to set himself up in front of the receiver to make a big tackle and stop. He shouldn't have gone for that. He should have went for the field goal. Would have been 2018 at that point. 2015 at that point. And then the other time they also went for on 4th down in the 4th quarter too. That's when you should have went.
It's funny you mention that because, I mean, a lob pass is one thing, but at the same time, New England had 0 running game going. They were held to just 44 yards on the ground. Do you think that their apprehension towards handing the ball off might have prompted for them to call for a pass play? Or do you feel that they were just confident enough in Brady for him to make a play?
I think it was a mixture of both. The running game was terrible yesterday. In fact, the most rushing yards was Tom Brady. And that one run he had in the entire game for 18 yards. Other than that, actually, it was less than that, but still, it wasn't just that. In the beginning of the game, remember when Manning had that backwards pass play that was intended for Ronnie Hillman, and it fouled off, and Jonathan Freeney recovered it, and they called it initially an incomplete pass, and then Belichick challenged the call, and it was reviewed, and he was right with the challenge. It was a backwards pass. It was a fumble recovery. So they ended up, a few plays later, going to a running play. Yeah.
The other thing is, why was Rob Gronkowski, who basically has emerged as their best receiver, not featured more often in this game? You look at the stats that he had to finish the game: 8 catches and 144 yards and that touchdown, which made it a 2-point game. His first half was really pedestrian. I mean, it got to the point where he was just an afterthought. Why did they not use him as often as they did down the stretch at the beginning.
You know what? Because they were trying a lot of plays with James White. That was the whole game plan. James White was really the guy that they wanted to use sort of out of the backfield in the same sense that Dion Lewis was months ago when they unfortunately lost him to a hip injury. So they wanted to utilize him because when they took away the short passing plays from Edelman and Amendola, and they were really covering well on Gronkowski, they had really no other players. Because you got to look at last week's divisional game. They had 7 drop passes from the receivers. You know, what really begs the question is why they didn't use Keyshawn Martin, who they drafted from Texas, who they acquired from Houston. Why didn't they use him except on special teams plays? That's why I wish they would have utilized him a little more, and maybe got Brandon LaFell involved a bit. Granted, he's had some cases of the dropsies, but you know what? That would have been a good game plan right there because the other defenders from Denver, I don't think would have even saw him coming.
Here's another thing, and this wound up being the X factor in the game, the missed extra point. Oh, yeah. That was gargantuan. And this also goes to show you the decision to move back the extra point has really become a good idea that the powers that be running the NFL decided to implement.
Well, that was his first miss in 524 tries. That's the other crazy stat right there. That's a span of almost a decade that he's never missed an extra point. And you are right. You mentioned that. It has had an impact, not just in this playoff game, but the entire regular season. It's because of the missed extra point of Stephen Gostkowski. It forced them, when they got that touchdown to Gronkowski, to go for the 2-point conversion. Because had he not missed the extra point earlier in the game, all New England had to do was just kick a field goal, and they would have been overtime yesterday. And who knows where the game would have went. So really, that's another question it begs. But Manning had a great, but we got to not take our focus away from Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
The first quarter, honestly, that was his best. The first half, in fact, those 2 big touchdowns to Owen Daniels.
Yeah. He and Owen Daniels have found a real chemistry working together. His numbers do not look great, but he made the plays when he was supposed to.
Yeah, especially the first touchdown. It was a 21-yarder. He went down the middle, no defense or coverage from New England whatsoever. Easily was able to go in. The second touchdown he had was onto the right side of the field.
Exactly right.
After the pick from Von Miller.
Yeah.
And that led to the touchdown to Owen Daniels. It's amazing. Von Miller yesterday, 2.5 sacks and an interception. And you had also DeMarcus Ware, and even Von Miller at one point converged on Brady too. They took it to him. They really took it to Brady yesterday, that defense. And you got to account that this defense led the league with 52 sacks. They gave up the least amount of yards, 273. And now, what's next for this team?
What's next is the Super Bowl. And just to give you a follow-up on that missed extra point, Stephen Gostkowski completely put the blame on himself, saying that if he had not missed that extra point, they would not have lost the game. There's no guarantee it was going to happen. I mean, who's to say that they would have not missed that 2-point opportunity at the end? That would have wiped out any blame there. But the bottom line is, it was such a well-played game. Denver was the better team in this game. They had the better game plan against Brady. Their defense was spectacular. But now they've got to step up in class in a couple of weeks.
Yes. I think the offensive line for New England just did a terrible job for New England. Sebastian Vollmer made some bad plays. There were some bad penalties too. But in the end, Denver did what they had to do. They won this game fair and square. They won by 2 points. And, congratulations, Denver. It's their record-tying 8th Super Bowl appearance.
Yeah.
And they tie New England, of all teams, that they defeated.
And just to give you an idea, Peyton Manning is now going to be the oldest starting quarterback in Super Bowl history. He's 39 now.
He beats his boss, John Elway, who was a part of Super Bowl 33 when they defeated Dan Reeves and the Atlanta Falcons 34-19. In fact, he was the MVP of that Super Bowl, and he officially retired.
Yeah. And it was a fitting way for him to end his career, winning 2 consecutive championships. This begs the question, though. Win or lose in a couple of weeks, are we going to be seeing Peyton Manning on the field next year? I think he's got a lot left in the tank, if you ask me.
I think if Peyton wins, I think he's going to pull an Elway. I think he's going to retire.
You think so?
If he doesn't win, I think he'll maybe give it one more year. I think a team will take a chance on him because it won't be Denver. I think
it would be disappointing if Denver would have just cut him loose the way they did.
I know, but I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah. I mean, I understand the whole fascination with Brock Osweiler, but there's a difference between Brock Osweiler, who's only had a handful of starts for his entire career, and Peyton Manning, who will be a first-ballot Hall of Famer.
Oh, and so will Brady, too. These are two first-ballot Hall of Famers who went up against each other for 17 times. This was maybe, I think, honestly, this could have been the final game we've seen these two in the same field together.
You think so? Interesting.
If Manning does come back next year, the NFL will probably try, come April when they release the schedule to try to get a game between them. Mm-hmm. If Manning returns for an 18th time, they'll try.
Mm-hmm.
But I honestly think if Denver wins, Manning's gone.
Interesting. By the way, we've already gotten a couple of text messages from my dear friend Guy Cormier, who's at home watching this.
Hey, Guy.
And also from our dear friend Coach John.
What's up, Coach John?
By the way, let's give a shout-out to our dear friend Coach John, who, of course, does a good job with the Staten Island Soccer Report. He's going to be doing his show this coming Wednesday night at 8. And in case you want to watch the show, if you have Fios, it's channel 35, and if you have Time Warner, it's channel 79. And let me also correct myself. Staten Island actually set a record, but it was 31 inches of snow that we got over the weekend, not 27. Now, as far as the NFC championships, we just go from the sublime to the ridiculous because it was total domination that the Panthers showed the primetime audience last night.
Yeah, on the initial drive for Carolina in the game, they ended up with a 45-yard field goal by Graham Gano. But it was then after that, when they got the ball back again, it was Ted Ginn Jr. Ted Ginn Jr. actually played the biggest impact besides Superman.
Mm-hmm.
He made that big touchdown play where he went down the left side, cut across the middle to the end zone. He also stopped Patrick Peterson, what could have been a big pick six, and that was after Patrick Peterson had the muff punt on special teams that led to the Cam Newton 1-yard touchdown from the goal line.
Speaking of that fumble, that was one of 7 turnovers, 6 of which were committed by Carson Palmer,
I know,
which resulted in this game.
4 picks, 2 lost fumbles. That's just.
And there was also that lost fumble on a punt, which probably became a real turning point in this game. But when you think about it, I think the turning point in this game was when Arizona went 3 and out, and Carolina wound up getting the ball back, and they wound up scoring on their first drive.
Yeah, that was the field goal right there for 3-0, and then the Ted Ginn for 10-0, and then afterwards, how about the 12-yard third-quarter touchdown run when Newton flew into the end zone and then ripped his chest like he was Superman. And
I think it was a little subtle with his touchdown celebrations, in addition to him doing the Superman thing, which has become a little passé.
Oh, but it's so much. I like that. It's one of my favorite things. And the dab.
I prefer him doing the dab as opposed to doing the Superman. Although, when you think about it, the new touchdown dance, or better yet, the new celebration, which is running off with the plug, like in the song Ritz-Carlton by Plies, that's become the new dance craze for NFL and football players in general. If you've ever seen that celebration before, these guys just run in one place as if they were jogging. That's a scene from that music video for Ritz-Carlton. It is so funny.
And don't they even sometimes they do the nay-nay too?
Sometimes they do the nay-nay. But lately, it's been definitely the running with the plug on it. Now, let's dissect Carolina's defense in this game. Coming away with 7 turnovers, including 6 mistakes by Carson Palmer, exactly what did the Panthers see that enabled them to be so opportunistic yesterday?
I think in this game, they really they did their homework on Palmer. They took away Larry Fitzgerald, who last week was a big weapon in the game against Green Bay. They made him really non-existent as opposed to the divisional round against Green Bay. The other receiver, the secondary just did a great job, including Josh Norman, who's been the best cover corner in the league. Led the league one of the best with 8 interceptions on the year. In fact, this is a defense that is, as you say, opportunistic. They led the league with 39 takeaways. One of the top 5 defenses in the league. One of the top 5 against the top 10 against the run and the pass. It's actually number 1 against the run. 78 yards they only gave up. Actually, no, number 3. But nonetheless, this...
By the way, the Cardinals were held to just 286 yards of offense in yesterday's game, while the...
But it's the offense, really.
The Panthers came away with 476. But, yeah, it was the way the Panthers just exploded offensively. Cam Newton with 335 yards of passing by himself.
2 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns. And you know what? Overall, to have a 49-15 victory like that and several points off takeaways, too.
And the running game was pretty decent, 152 yards on the ground. But Cam Newton basically made this thing happen all by himself. He was able to find his receivers. There were a couple of times when he was overthrowing guys a little bit, but at the same time, he was just magnificent. He took this game all by himself. He's really matured as a primetime player in the 5 years that he's played for them.
I liked his pass he made to Philly Brown. That 47 at the Carolina 47, the way he just darted with no defense. That was another problem. Arizona's secondary is the other story in this game. Where were they?
Yeah.
You mentioned, Tyrann Mathieu. Losing him, you know what? They needed him for this game. I thought maybe they were going to be able to get by without him, but he really has been one of the biggest pieces of that secondary besides Patrick Peterson, and it just was sad not to have him on the field. And Carson Palmer did not help the defense any bit with those turnovers.
It's impossible to try and win games when you keep on putting your own defense in such a awkward state the way they did. Carolina basically spent the entire time in Arizona's backfield with the number of turnovers that they committed.
And Riverboat Ron, as they call him, Ron Rivera, of course, was one of the great defenders on that 85 Bears team.
In fact, he won a championship with that 85 Bears. They have the 46 defense, and now he's going to try and win his first title as a coach.
Which would be interesting to see. And the reason they call him Riverboat Ron, because he's gambled a lot on certain plays. He runs a lot of 4th down plays.
Yeah.
So you have to expect that in the Super Bowl. If there's a 4th down play, like inside Denver's territory, he's gonna roll the dice because that's what he likes to do. As for the rest of the game, honestly, it was just the rest of this game, this Carolina defense was just way out of control. But Thomas Davis, he had 6 tackles, broke his left hand.
Yeah, and he already underwent surgery earlier this morning to repair his broken arm. He insists he's going to play in the Super Bowl. He better make a really quick recovery because he's got 2 weeks to try and prepare for this. And now, can we put to rest all of this stuff about Ron Rivera's job being in jeopardy? He's gone from being on the chopping block to finally leading the Panthers to that 2nd Super Bowl. Now, if he can win a championship, all bets are off.
Well, you know what? Jerry Richardson, the owner and former player, Dave Gettleman, a former executive with the Giants organization, and now Ron Rivera. Really, years ago, before Gettleman even came to town, there were doubts when they selected Cam Newton number 1 overall in the 2010 NFL draft. 2011 NFL draft after his successful. No, it was 2010 after his successful BCS title win with Auburn. People didn't know where this kid was coming from. He was very raw in the beginning, yet he did have the most rushing yards in his first season in the NFL. There was maturity issues. There were times where he would put his head in the sand, where every time, remember when he had press conferences where you have a towel wrapped on his head? Or
Yeah.
like
That really smacked of immaturity right there. Speaking of which,
but he's grown.
yeah, speaking of which, he's done so much growing up in the 5 years that he's played for them. It was just a matter of time before he got surrounded by a group of better players. And what about the draft pick that they made, getting Luke Kuechly? Has he become a find for them or what?
The first year he came out of the gate from Boston College, I was actually at that draft in 2012. That was the year when, of course, Andrew Luck got selected number 1 by the Colts, and RG3 got selected by
the Redskins.
By the Redskins, and Trent Richardson, of course, got selected by Cleveland, and 2 of those 3 did not work out. But Luke Kuechly at Boston College, he got selected 8th overall, 8th or 9th overall by the Panthers, and he really has worked out so well. In the last 2 weeks, he's had pick sixes, including yesterday for 23 yards, and the week before against Seattle, that really was the turning point. He led the league in overall tackles in his first season, and he won the Defensive Rookie of the Year award coming out of Boston College. And he's won the Defensive Player of the Year award too.
Yeah.
He's really one of the best linebackers in the league. And what was really good about him was they started him off on the weak side. When they moved him to middle linebacker, that's when the defense really came together. Getting started with Tulele, drafting him out of Utah, having Thomas Davis.
Yep. Their draft history has been really, really sparkling in the last, I would say, 5 or 10 years or so. Lotulelei, Kuechly, Kelvin Benjamin, of course, who they got out of Florida State.
Who didn't, unfortunately, play this year because he tore his ACL. And that was the other big storyline for Carolina. Coming into the season, Kelvin Benjamin, one of their star receivers from 2014, who had 1,000 yards coming out of Florida State, tears his ACL out. So, what do you think? There's panic. There's panic in the front office and for Panthers Nation. But then all of a sudden, Cam Newton just, all right, let's get to work. Let's get our lunch boxes, our hard hats, and let's get to work. And they got to work on 14 straight victories, including the streak they had from the end of last season.
And, of course, some of the free agent pickups have been really shrewd. Of course, there's Ted Ginn, Greg Olsen, who's become one of the top tight ends in the game. He had a terrific game yesterday.
You know, they acquired him from Chicago. He was in that trade. With Chicago, that's right. And you know what? It has worked out for both parties. You got away from that terrible front office in the Windy City. He didn't like the direction of the organization. And I love, his devotion, his love to his son. As you know, his son suffers from a major medical condition, which he's devoted his life to helping any family or that are dealing with situations like that. He's a nice charity that if you ever read about, it's amazing what he does and the love he shows for his kid. In fact, he's got 3 kids.
Yeah.
But it was on I think it was one of those 30 for 30 specials. They were talking about him.
Yeah.
And of course, Cam Newton, the love he has for kids too.
Yeah.
Every time he gets a touchdown.
In fact, any Panther who scores a touchdown, they'll give the game ball to a little kid in the stands.
Which is the right thing to do. They are, they're the future, these little guys and all that.
Yep. I mean, who cares about the fines that they get for giving footballs away to fans? It's definitely worth it. If I'm the Broncos, I would spend these next 2 weeks hitting the playbook hard to try and game plan against that team. And we mentioned before about Ron Rivera. When he first took his head coaching job with the Panthers, do you know that he wound up contacting, of all people, John Madden, who won a Super Bowl with the Raiders all those years ago, to try and get some advice about what to do in this game? Typical of John Madden, he told Ron Rivera, just be yourself and make sure that you do things your way, because eventually you are going to get fired. And that's the nature of this business. People lose their jobs all the time, but at least if they do lose their jobs, they wind up losing their jobs doing things their way as opposed to being a carbon copy of somebody else.
Oh, without a doubt. It's this. Both teams are really going to have to game plan. Right now, this is the week where a lot of the players are resting right now for the first few days. Heal whatever wounds they had in yesterday's game, get their bodies rested. And then I would say Wednesday, Thursday, that's when the teams will start practicing and in their hometown, in their home training facilities. Then by Saturday, Sunday, it's Sunday, that's when both teams will make the travel to begin Super Bowl week from where they are, Denver or Charlotte, North Carolina, to San Francisco. They'll probably be at high school facilities most likely, or college facilities, probably UC Berkeley from one or Stanford for the other, depending on which team will give up their field where they will practice. And then, of course, they'll be at separate hotels. Then we got the whole media junket going on Tuesday, a week from today, where the insanity begins.
Yeah, media day is going to be a real issue for all these guys. Now, did you happen to see Tom Brady's press conference after yesterday's game against the Broncos?
Do I really want to look at some guy with a puss face on or this is always my favorite, having Bleachers. Well, guys, we didn't play well. We just got to prepare for next year. That's all. Yeah.
Even better, did you see all of the jokes that were made about Brady after he lost yesterday? My favorite one was this quick meme that they did of him where he was crying about Peyton Manning, and there was someone in a high voice speaking as if he were Brady, and complaining about how they didn't play well and how Manning kept on saying the word Omaha so many times.
If he's going to complain, that's Peyton Manning's specialty. That's the way he calls his plays. That's how he gets his offensive line, his receivers ready to go. The way his cadence, Omaha. And you know what? It's made a city in Nebraska really happy.
Yeah, and it's also made Omaha one of the most popular cities in football.
Right there. So, there were even complaints yesterday from Gronkowski, that when he was being held in the end.
That should have been a holding call, but it did not get called at all.
Me too. You know what? And I honestly think that was holding because he did grab his jersey. When you grab somebody's jersey and if you make it obvious, it's easy yellow flag right there for the referees. But if you don't get caught, or if it doesn't look like it's like that bad holding to a referee, that's the thing about refereeing. It's judgment call. That's really it. It's judgment call at the time.
Yep.
They judge it differently. We, the fans, judge it another way. And obviously we're never going to agree, on their judgments. And sometimes, they'll admit, yeah, I called it wrong, guys. I made a bad call. But no matter what, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Once it's called, it's called. But after stating the obvious, in this, I can't wait to do our Super Bowl show.
Yeah.
Which is going to be...
We got 2 weeks to try and ponder who's going to be the winner in this game. To be honest with you, the way Carolina looked yesterday, they are going to pose a lot of problems for Denver's defense.
Oh, with that, well, their offense definitely, it's their offense versus Denver's defense. Denver is going to have to really game plan around this two-way quarterback. Brady was easy to defend against. All you had to do is contain him in the pocket and confuse him. It's not as easy with Cam Newton, who is able to get out of the pocket easily and run the ball. And he can do some zone plays where he can either pass it off like he's going to Jonathan Stewart and then he can run to his right. Sort of like trying to face Russell Wilson back in Super Bowl 48 where they lost 43-8. They really have to look at that game film to get a sense of what they're in store for. But our show is going to be Friday, February 5th, our Super Bowl 50 special on the Blitz, and we're going to have some guests as well joining us. But this week, we got the Pro Bowl coming up.
That's right, which means now that they're going to have this basically the equivalent of a fantasy Pro Bowl, they're going to have the Fantasy Pro Bowl draft taking place on ESPN in a couple of nights, which means...
Wednesday.
Yeah, Deion Sanders and Michael Irvin, the two Hall of Famers, are going to be literally choosing up sides. It's going to be like a playground game.
And they're going to have the fantasy leaders. So, like the two big fantasy leaders from NFL.com, depending on their metrics, whoever had the best year in fantasy football will get to also be a part of those respective teams. And they're going to have an offensive and defensive captain as coach as well. And most of the players that were picked were from Carolina, so they're not going to be there.
Yeah. They've got more important things to worry about. I mean, a trip to Hawaii is great, but a trip to Santa Clara, California is even better.
On top of that trip to Hawaii, they get a nice $100,000 bonus, or I think they get even more than that. And their agents, of course, take off 10-15%. Their managers, friends who are their leeches or entourage. And then they'll get whatever's left after all that.
That's right.
But they get a nice free trip, and it gets fun in the sun. In the end, I'm going with Team Irvin. I think they're going to win.
I couldn't even begin to tell you who wins in this one. I would have to see what sides are chosen. By the way, a follow-up on last night's conference title games. It says that 99 million viewers combined watched both games. It says that the Patriot game got 53.3 million viewers on CBS, and the NFC title game got 45.7 million viewers on Fox.
Which is really, those are very good numbers, especially the 53 million. That was because of Brady Manning. That's why that many people viewed Brady Manning. When you have that kind of titanic, matchup right there, a huge match between two Goliaths, if you will.
Yeah, two cagey veterans who've combined to win 5 championships, 4 of which, of course, were won by Brady. 17 times those two future Hall of Famers have met. Do you know that the next closest meeting between two quarterbacks has been 3? And it's been set at least twice in NFL history.
It reminds me of like Bird Magic, Ali Frazier.
That's right.
These, those rivalries that will last through the annals of time, if you will, in sports history. But you know what? I really was thrilled with the results, even though I did pick New England, but I'm really happy for Peyton Manning. In fact, I got an autographed Peyton Manning from Denver in my room right now. So if Peyton wins, that could be very valuable.
Yeah. You could make the argument that maybe Peyton is going to be a sentimental favorite among a lot of casual football fans or even diehard football fans to win a championship in a couple of weeks. He's had 18 glorious seasons in the NFL. His playoff history has been really, really shoddy, but the bottom line is he's going to be playing for a second title coming up.
Well, as they say, offense wins games, defense wins championships. Defense will be the name of the game. Now, let's go see what's in the other world of sports. Starting with the new top 25 in college basketball. Oklahoma still remains, even though they lost a week ago to Iowa State, but they were able to hold on to a victory against Butler to remain number 1. North Carolina is number 2. They did lead Virginia Tech by 36-16 late in the first half, but they nearly lost that game. It was just, even though Virginia Tech went on a 27-8 run in the 7-minute span, Marcus Page, though, in the last 4 games, he really needs to get his three-point shooting in check.
Yeah.
He's gone 1 of 22. Need to fix that. Iowa, Hawkeyes, 3rd in the nation. Unbelievable.
Their highest ranking in years.
And who is it all owed to? One man, Jared Utoff.
Yep.
This is the guy who some people might say will be the Naismith Player of the Year. The Wooden Player of the Year, which is given to the best player in the entire country. In January, he's averaging 21.7 points a game. And then you got Peter Jock, who's really also going with him. You got Mike Gessel running the point, Woodbury and Don Ull in the paint, Jock, who's doing good with scoring and defense. This is a team that could win or should win the Big Ten championship.
Quite possibly.
Fran McCaffrey, great job you've been doing there. Kansas Jayhawks, they're still 4th in the country and all that. And, they struggled a little bit against Texas Tech this past week. And with Oklahoma State, before, they beat Texas for a 17-5 lead in that game. it was very interesting. Now they got Iowa State and Kentucky coming up.
Yeah.
It's a tough slate right there. If they can win both those games, that's huge for their resume come March. Texas A&M, number 5 in the country.
Yep.
And Jalen Jones, he's really been their best go-to player. 20 points in each game that they won last week. And 24.5% from three-point range. 58.5% from the free throw line.
How about the Renaissance season that Texas A&M has had with their basketball program? And they're undefeated in Southeastern Conference play.
And they've won a record, I think, 10 straight games so far in a row. Yeah, the South SEC, they have a 2-game lead in that conference. They got a tough 6-game stretch, including South Carolina. And the rest of the rankings, you got the Wildcats Villanova number 6. You got the Musketeers of Xavier at 7.
Speaking of Villanova, they lost a really disappointing game, exciting game also, to Providence in Big East Conference play yesterday.
Yeah, along with Xavier at number 7. And you got Providence also. You got 3 Big East teams in the top 10 this week. You got Maryland number 8, West Virginia number 9, a turnover-prone team, or a press coverage team. Virginia with the pack line at number 11. Michigan State at number 12. They've lost 2 straight 1-point games. They've been a bit of a free fall.
Yep.
And then finally, there are no undefeateds left because SMU lost to Temple yesterday.
Yeah, and handily, too.
Iowa State, of course, is still at number 14, and they got a big victory, as I mentioned, last week against Oklahoma.
Yep.
So they're still in contention for the Big 12. Miami is number 15. They had a rough 3-game stretch on the road, but they came back home and won. They got a big game tonight at home in Coral Gables against Duke.
Jim Larinaga has done such a great job for that program since he took over, I think it was 5 years ago.
And you got to like the array of players. Angel Rodriguez being amongst them. The Louisville Cardinals still at number 16, but there's an investigation coming up against Louisville.
Why am I not surprised?
Apparently, one of the assistants might have hired some questionable people to perform some questionable acts that I will not get into detail because we are on a family network.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with this one. When you think about it, it's not really that surprising because this has happened in quite a few places before.
Just to get for recruitment purposes. Even though you don't need to recruit people you should recruit people based on the team and the school's merit, but apparently people need to go a step too far, if you will. The Baylor Bears, the number 17, Torian Prince leading that team. The Arizona Wildcats, despite the injuries, they're still in the top 25, 18. The Hoosiers of Indiana at 19. The Wildcats, what a fall, number 20.
Yeah.
21, of course, is Purdue. Wichita State is back for the first time since the beginning of the year in the top 25 at 22. Oregon is at 23. You got Duke at 24. Who would have thought I would say the Duke Blue Devils at number 24 in the country?
Yeah, that's because Duke went through a really rough stretch recently. They lost 3 in a row, finally snapped that streak with a victory against North Carolina State over the weekend. But Duke has been very, very up and down this season.
I can't wait to their showdown with North Carolina.
Yeah.
Always. That's one of the greatest sports rivalries in history. And finally, the Fighting Irish and Notre Dame round up the top 25 this week.
Since you mentioned the men's top 25, should we be even surprised who's number 1 in the women's ranks?
I'm going to go with Connecticut.
Yes. They of the 55-game winning streak, including a 60-point victory over SMU over the weekend.
Ouch.
Just to give you an idea, the entire top 25 consists of UConn, South Carolina, Notre Dame, Baylor, Maryland, Texas, Ohio State, Arizona State, Oregon State, Texas A&M, which means Texas A&M's men and women are in the top 10.
As well as the Maryland team as well.
There's also Florida State, Kentucky, Mississippi State, Louisville, UCLA, Stanford, Miami, Michigan State, Tennessee, South Florida, Oklahoma, Missouri, DePaul, West Virginia, and Washington cracks the top 25 for the first time in a couple of years.
Man, what a great day for basketball. Now on to last night, Orlando, Florida, the beginning of the 2016 year for pay-per-views for WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment, and it was the annual Royal Rumble pay-per-view. The first match, of course, was the dark match, which is shown on the kickoff. It was a fatal four-way tag match. The winning tag team would be entrants in the Royal Rumble, and it was, of course, the winners were Jack Swagger and Mark Henry, who defeated the Dudley Boys, the Ascension, and one of the weirdest combinations I could ever think of, Damian Sandow and Darren Young.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we got it went pretty predictable when you think about it. Not just that particular match, but the entire pay-per-view in general. But there was one shining moment out of that Royal Rumble match. It was the debut of AJ Styles.
This guy was the hottest commodity, the hottest free agent after his contract with TNA, which is Total Nonstop Action, ended. So WWE has been courting this gentleman for weeks, for months, to get him to come to WWE. Because if you look at the roster, the injuries, the depletion that we've had because of injuries with Cesaro, with John Cena, with Randy Orton, Daniel Bryan, all these big superstars being injured one after the other. They need to bring a big-time, impactful wrestler, and they got a guy who fits that bill. What does AJ Styles bring to WWE that they lack?
Quickness, aerial ability, big-time charisma. That's your triple threat that you're going to be seeing from AJ Styles in the next few weeks and months. I just hope that the writers and powers that be at WWE use this guy to the ability that his fans know him to have. Because, quite frankly, they have really run some of the wrestlers on that roster into the ground with some of the ridiculous gimmicks and storylines that they've come up for them.
Well, what I saw last night, he debuted at number 3 in the Rumble. He lasted 28 minutes.
See, that's the thing. If you're going to bring in a star like him, you need to use him properly. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Why couldn't they make this guy the last man to make his way into the ring? Why did they have to showcase him so early?
Actually, you know what? I respectfully disagree, because I liked how they brought him out. It really, the crowd was so into it. I actually was into it too. Because at first it was Roman Reigns and Rusev, and it was the rematch of the last two from the 2014 Rumble, the 2015 Rumble, and then all of a sudden the fans really were like, oh yeah, and they all went crazy for him, and I saw why. You mentioned his aerial ability skills, the way he's able to contort his body and do things that some of the other wrestlers can't even do. Besides Neville, he's one of the only guys that maybe could match AJ Styles in terms of all those things you mentioned. It was a good pickup for WWE. I think we're going to see plenty more from him tonight. We might even see him in his first rivalry with, say, Kevin Owens.
Well, a guy like him, I would like to think that maybe they'll start him off slowly and then bring him into a rivalry that will include a major superstar right now. I mean, Kevin Owens is one thing, but let's see him compete for a WWE title. Let's see him compete with a guy like Triple H, or maybe someone like when he returns from his injury,
Seth Rollins. But you know what? What was crazy about this matchup was during the event, Roman Reigns, of course, was fighting for his title. What happens? Vince McMahon, of course, who now is bringing back the Attitude Era all over again, because he's the boss who everybody hates, and this time Roman Reigns is the modern-day Stone Cold Steve Austin, who wants to take a piss on the Authority and tell them where to go, off. So Vince, of course, naturally doesn't like that. So he has his goons, the League of Nations, this new creative gimmick or troop or organization, take Roman Reigns from behind, from his legs down, out of the ring, beat the snot out of him, and then Rusev goes from one table, jumps from the American announcer's table to the Spanish announcer's table to the French announcer's table on top of Roman Reigns, and takes him out of the match for a pretty long time. Of course, eventually Roman Reigns comes back, tries to win the match, And then at number 30 of all people comes out Triple H.
Yeah.
And then the final four, eventually they had their little moment where they stared each other down, fists are flying. Eventually we come to the final four. It's Triple H, Sheamus, Dean Ambrose, who earlier defeated Kevin Owens in a last man standing match for the IC title, and Roman Reigns. Of course, Sheamus was eliminated first from that final four, and then Roman Reigns was eliminated from behind from Triple H.
Yeah.
And then it was down to Dean and Triple H. And eventually Triple H eliminated Dean Ambrose. And now, of all jokes and reality, fortunately, Triple H is your champion.
Champion for what? The 16th or 17th time in his career?
14th.
The 14th time in his...
Actually, 15th, sorry.
The 15th time in what has been a
14th,
Hall of Fame career for him. But how much longer do the fans have to be subjected to the same old recycled storyline where the same wrestler that's been around, in the case of Triple H, 2 decades with the same company, has to keep on getting his title shots?
This was just ridiculous. Honestly, I don't care what anybody says.
And Triple H is now champion for the 14th time.
Yeah, 14th time. It's just utterly ridiculous, this storyline right here. Bringing back the old Attitude Era with Roman Reigns, again, against the Authority, against the Grain.
Mm-hmm.
That should be Dean Ambrose. He's the kind of guy that looks like a modern-day Austin.
There you go.
Not Roman Reigns. I love Roman, but he can't speak well as...
Again, I say talk is cheap.
I know.
Let the guy dictate himself with his ability.
What I mean, he's a modern-day Diesel. He doesn't speak with his words, he speaks with his fists.
Yeah.
Dean Ambrose is Steve Austin, where he not only speaks with his fists, but with his insane mouth.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they call him the lunatic fringe. But nonetheless, I just do not like, as you mentioned, recycling these storylines. They need to go somewhere in a new direction. And it wasn't even just that pissed me off. It was Brock Lesnar, what happened to him during the match.
Yeah.
He was able to come into the ring and go and knocked out all members of the Wyatt family.
Yeah.
Knocked out Braun Strowman, who earlier in the match, by himself, eliminated Mark Henry in the Big Show.
Mm-hmm.
And Kane, which is no easy feat with those guys. You need like 5-6 guys to get those people eliminated.
Just goes to show you how powerful Lesnar is.
No, that was Braun Strowman did that.
I mean, Strowman, yeah.
And then, so Lesnar was able to eliminate Braun Strowman, which is really challenging. He eliminated Eric Rowan. He eliminated Luke Harper. So Bray Wyatt was on his own.
Yeah.
Or so we thought, because all three of them come back into the ring and help Wyatt. And then, of course, they eliminate Brock Lesnar, and there are no disqualifications in the Royal Rumble.
Mm-hmm. And I just got a text message from our dear friend Lynn, who's watching the show right now. Do you know that AJ Styles is 38 years of age right now?
He doesn't look a day over 26.
38 years of age, and she sees a bad moon rising for AJ Styles. She doesn't think that AJ Styles is going to be any more than a main event or any more than a mid-card level type of wrestler. A guy like him cannot be subjected to mid-card level status.
No.
He needs to be a main event guy,
With
especially since this is his first go-around with WWE.
With the money they gave this guy, as we heard, was too hard to pass over. There's no way they're going to make him a mid-card guy.
If they do, it's insulting.
Really. You know, it reminds me of when Bret Hart went to WCW and he got that big contract offer. And he was going to be the main guy, but all of a sudden they underutilized him when they had a chance to end WWE, and therefore it led to WCW's demise.
Yeah.
One of the reasons.
And also, he wound up suffering that really horrific concussion at the hands of Goldberg when he got basically booted right in the face.
That's why, you know, a lot of times they don't... Well, they do restrict certain moves to the head, but they still allow people to do sort of Shawn Michaels-style kicks to the face, Sweet Chin Music-style kicks they still allow. I'm surprised these guys have dental insurance.
Yep. And with about 5.5 minutes left, we'd be remiss if we did not mention what's going on in hockey, basketball, and, of course, baseball. The big story in baseball around here is the fact that Yoenis Cespedes is going to be a Met at least for 2016 because he got himself a new contract with them.
It's a huge deal right there. A 3-year deal. At least they didn't give in to the pressure of what the Nationals were bringing to the table. Was a 5-year, $125 million contract, which honestly, for a guy like Cespedes, wasn't realistic.
Yeah. You could look at this in two ways. One, they really needed his bat, and he certainly provided some pop for them the last 2 months of the season. In fact, he was one of the reasons why they went to the World Series last year.
Especially after the 40 games he was with the team, 25-15 they won down the stretch.
But for another, they now have a major logjam in the outfield. It's now going to be him, Michael Conforto, Juan Lagare, Alejandro De Aza, and Curtis Granderson in that outfield. Somebody's going to have to take a seat.
Yeah, somebody will definitely be relegated. Not Granderson. I don't think he's going to be relegated to the bench.
And I would hate for them to put Michael Conforto on the bench, especially with the potential that he showed them last year.
Well, it all depends on spring training. That's why we have spring training, because this will show who will be suited to the starting outfield position, who will be a bench player.
Which reminds me, 4 weeks until pitchers and catchers.
I'm going to Florida, in fact, mid-March. Hoping to go see the one of the games in Port St. Lucie, of course, at Digital Domain Stadium. If you're ever down there, I would definitely go there. And if you're a Yankee fan, the stadium they have across from Raymond James Stadium, nice.
Yep.
Good barbecue, too,
and
as well.
Speaking of nice to see the Rangers, Islanders, and Devils basically make a go of it for the last playoff spots in the Eastern Conference. We're more than halfway through the season. Unfortunately, the Rangers have slumped really badly the last couple of months or so. Yesterday, they got a goose egg given to them by the Senators.
3-0. Yeah.
And right now, they're playing Buffalo on national television. The Rangers do have a 1-0 lead.
Who scored?
I'm going to find that out for you right now. Also, the Islanders are hosting Detroit. They're tied at 1 after 1. As far as what's going on in the Ranger game, it's on NBC Sports, and JT Miller has just scored for the Rangers.
And you know what? The Florida Panthers, one of the great storylines, they got a chance. I think they're gonna be in the playoffs with the position they put themselves in. They're gonna be in the playoffs come April for a team that doesn't sell out that many games. I might try and get a ticket to a game against the Red Wings if I'm down there.
And also, All-Star Weekend is coming up. The All-Star game is going to be in Nashville. And
Music City.
And it looks like John Scott, who wound up being traded by Arizona to Montreal, is going to suit up for the All-Star game after all.
Very nice indeed. And now, Jonathan Drouin, we still don't know what's going to happen with him in the Tampa Bay Lightning. There's been rumors for weeks that he's going to be traded because he wants out of Tampa. Him and his agent made that adamantly clear. He wants out of Tampa. Who will take him? Rangers are a possible suitor.
Yep.
Now, as for the NBA, the Knicks, of course, are inconsistent.
Up and down, up and down. Win 4 in a row, lose 4 in a row, win 2 in a row, or in this case, lose 2 in a row. They got their heads handed to them by the Clippers, and they lost over the weekend to the Hornets.
They're 2 games under 500 as opposed to the Nets, who are consistently bad.
Yeah, they wound up firing Lionel Hollins. Now Tony Brown is their interim. Rumor has it they might want to get Tom Thibodeau to be the next head coach.
Good luck.
Well, let me put it this way. It's going to take more than just a head coach to fix that franchise. They don't even have any number 1 picks or second-round picks in their arsenal in the next year or two.
Get a new GM and get a new owner. Prokhorov, step aside. Let somebody else run that team. You pretty much ruined that franchise. As for tennis, of course, Rafael Nadal was eliminated last week in the first week of the Australian Open. Roger Federer is into the quarterfinals, as well as Serena, who will actually be playing Maria Sharapova in the quarters. That should be an interesting match. A lot of upsets in the top 10 in the women's circuit, and some big upsets with the men. So let's see what happens this next week. I'll give you a full report on next Monday's show.
Yep. That is going to do it for us, folks. Before we go, we want to say thanks to everyone who watched our show tonight. Thanks to Kenny Graham, who just walked in to the other side of the glass. Thanks for everyone for sending their messages. And we are going to be posting this episode, in case you missed it, on YouTube, basically any moment right now. So for Kenny on the other side of the glass, and for my dear friend Eric, thank you once again.
Thank you, Jamie.
I'm Jamie. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.
Good night.